Before anyone comments about my mustache, I just started growing this 3 days ago. I don't need to hear it right now. Baby Keem is a pretty young guy. I mean, he's like a year and a day younger than me, so at least I know I'm pretty impressed by what he's been able to accomplish in the industry so far. He's been putting out music for a few years now, including 2 mixtapes in 2018 and 2019, the second of which had some pretty big songs, like Honest and Orange Soda, both of which had a pretty distinctive style, and people were starting to notice what Keem was all about. Baby Keem self-produces most of his music. He has a pretty minimal trap-like style, and he raps with choppy yet melodic flows that remind me of someone like a Playboi Carti or Lil Uzi, but lyrically he often focuses much more on introspective and emotional topics like relationships, depression, family, growing up. It's things like that that for me make him a lot more versatile of an artist than other rappers who rap with a similar cadence. Now, I had never been a huge fan of Baby Keem before this record came out, aside from a few songs, so honestly my expectations were neither low nor high because I could recognize his talent, but I just wasn't super interested in his previous projects. Plus, it didn't really help that I felt like the cover art for the Melodic Blue was kind of drab and colorless. Despite having tons of color in it, it somehow still felt monotone. Anyway, the singles from this album were some of my favorite tracks that Keem has dropped yet, so I went into the project with an open mind despite my previous reservations. This is the good and the bad of the Melodic Blue. Listening to the Melodic Blue for the first time, there are a few things I noticed immediately. First off, there's something almost lonely about Keem's solo songs. When there's no one else on a track with him, the way that he writes and produces for himself can result in these great tracks that honestly feel a lot like the cover art. Keem has a blunt honesty about his inner thoughts and feelings that just makes it easy to get lost in the music, especially on songs like Lost Souls, Issues, Scars, and the album's final track, 16. Overall, Melodic Blue is a very personal, diary-like project. You know, it might sound like a joke, but Keem repeatedly shouting out Tame Impala as an ad-lib actually made me realize how much influence he's taking from Kevin Parker's songwriting and creative process as a whole, especially considering that both of them are self-producing the vast majority of their songs. The opening track, Trademark USA, is basically an overview of each sound Keem is going to go for on the album, with a reserved little intro, a banger middle section, and almost Kanye or Cudi-like anthemic outro with humming, synths, and big drums. Pink Panties is a standout track for a lot of people. It's definitely not a bad song, but being followed by Scapegoats, a raw, powerful interlude where Keem raps a poem-like verse about enjoying his success and not letting his past hold him back, which is then followed by 2 of my favorite tracks off the album, Range Brothers and Issues. It's kind of easy to forget that Pink Panties is even there at all. Anyway, Range Brothers. The Kendrick feature is great. They pretty much match each other's energy, and obviously it's one of the first verses we've heard from Kendrick in years, so why wouldn't he go all out? So both of them are just going off for 5 minutes, and you know, I really couldn't be happier with the song. The big sounding production with strings, backing vocals, and a beat switch. And you know, we already knew Keem had a great hold on the sound of his generation. I mean, he pretty much raps like Carti if Carti went to a therapist and read a book every now and then, and it works. Now, obviously, Keem isn't biting anybody. He makes these flows and his baby voice entirely his own, but you can't say that he's not tapping into what works right now. Yet at the same time, there's something subtle, mature, and maybe even timeless about a lot of Keem's production and raps, and in some way, I think that might be working against him at this point in his career. In a time when a lot of artists aren't known for the sum of their music, but instead people remember them for their most ostentatious and shockingly memorable music. And now because of TikTok, a lot of artists aren't even getting popular off songs, but instead they're getting popular off 10 or 15-second snippets within songs. But I don't think that's really the game that Keem is trying to play with his music, because honestly, besides Kendrick's wacky guest verses, I don't think there's a whole lot of moments on this album that could go viral. Now, that's not a complaint for me. I think it's a much better listening experience because of it, but I'm interested to see how much of an impact that's going to make on Keem's popularity over the next year or so. If his music isn't on rotation on TikTok or something like that between projects, is that going to make an impact on how many people listen to him? I mean, you look up his songs on TikTok sounds and yeah, they don't get played there a lot, at least not compared to someone like Playboi Carti or Lil Uzi. I mean, I guess we'll see as time goes on, but for now it seems like Keem isn't really focusing on being a meme. My favorite tracks on the Melodic Blue are, like I mentioned earlier, the more melancholic, introspective ones. Scapegoats, Issues, Lost Souls, Scars, First Order of Business, 16. There's something about his approach to emotional topics that just works, especially with the more alternative indie production and presentation. In a way, I think Keem is heavily influenced by Kanye's 808s, and he pulls it off really well, to the point where I can see this kickstarting a revival of the melodic, emotional singing and indie pop style production that Kanye pioneered all the way back in 2008. Again, like I mentioned earlier, Keem's blunt emotional honesty and introspection is kind of weird for someone so young, but he executes it nearly perfectly. His attitude towards love and relationships on Lost Souls, the way he calmly questions humanity's capacity for good and evil on Scars, the calm, quiet instrumental on First Order of Business hits hard while he examines his priorities, questions the loyalty of the people around him, and talks about his optimistic outlook. I mean, damn, like, will you be the person that's gonna love me in my 40s? How is that not one of the best lines in any song he's ever put out? Lost Souls has some of my favorite Baby Keem bars too. It's a whole lot of hoes in here, a lot of lost souls. I mean, I know that feeling of no matter how much you turn up, no matter how good of a time you have, when that's not what you want, it's not what you want. And it's kind of crazy to me that a 20-year-old wrote this song. He's obviously way beyond his years. And one note, actually, some of these more introspective tracks, the bars about women, they kind of remind me of Drake in some weird way. Like, if Drake wasn't an emotionally immature man-child, this is what he would be writing. Family Ties is obviously a future classic track. It's the most likely on the album to go viral considering it's already racked up 35 million streams on Spotify in like 2 weeks. Keem pulls out his hardest rapping with a repetitive, choppy mumble rap flow, and Kendrick brought out some wild energy too with his brother lines and the smoking on your top 5 tonight. It's his first release since 2018, and I couldn't be happier to hear him experimenting again. Closing out the album, Durag Activity is a banger, but I did see a few people calling it boring online. Honestly though, this has been in my rotation since it dropped last year, and I have no problem with it. I thought Travis sounded pretty good. Boom Man is another banger with great drums, and the trumpet sample sounds hard as hell. Lyrically and flow-wise, Keem somehow manages to put his own unique spin on a standard bragging hip-hop track. Second to last track, Vent, is a quick banger with an uncredited feature from Kendrick and some of Keem's best baby voice, but to me, 16, the last song, is much more memorable. 16 is also pretty short, it's just around 2.5 minutes, but for me, I can't get enough of it. Everything about this song just screams Tame Impala. The loud lo-fi drums, the quiet synth chords and melodies in the background, Keem singing and questioning the nature of love, in that he simultaneously wants true connections, but continues to make mistakes that land him in trouble with the people he's trying to love. It's honestly one of my favorite songs he's ever made. I mean, I mentioned it earlier, but he's really not kidding when he shouts out Tame Impala. Kevin Parker has had a huge influence on this kid and how he makes music, and honestly, that's more than welcome. If Keem keeps playing with this sound, I would be more than happy to hear more of it. I think he has a real talent for these types of melodies and songwriting. I mean, I can't imagine his take on currents or inner speaker, lonerism. He could have a real future in bringing the indie scene to a bigger audience. Now, he does have a great hold on the sound of his generation of hip-hop with the choppy flow, the baby voice, but he's also playing with other sounds. You know, he's got the Kanye 808s sound on some songs, the alt and indie vocals. It's a really versatile project, and I think he pulls off each sound very well. I think my favorite part of this project is how Keem questions right and wrong and perceives everyone around him in a nuanced way. There's something really therapeutic about hearing someone my own age think about the bigger picture of his life. And I find a lot of solace in this album. As someone around the same age as Keem, I know for sure that songs like Issues, Lost Souls, Family Ties, Range Brothers, Scars, First Order of Business, and 16, these are going to be on my playlists for a really long time. Now, I might be out of pocket for this one, but I can easily see Baby Keem creating his own lane in music and becoming hugely respected and influential as a songwriter later on. He's not going to live in his cousin's shadow, that's for sure. It's clear that he's got a ton of unique ideas and sounds he's chasing, and I can't wait to hear what he comes up with next. I genuinely have nothing to complain about for this album. I was talking bad about the cover art earlier, but it turns out that cover art perfectly represents what this record sounds like, and I've come to enjoy it. It's a little messy, you know, there's not a whole lot of consistency in the sound here, but I can't complain because I like how everything sounds. In the end, I really like this album. I would rate the Melodic Blue an 8 out of 10. This has been Volksgeist. Thank you for watching. Okay, show them your mustache.
It's a far superior stash. The far superior stash.